Danger Dolan. Alright, so rumors for a World of Starcraft have been floating around since the start of WoW. In some ways, it would feel like a spiritual sequel instead of focusing on a single planet, right? It'd be more like the Old Republic, spanning entire galaxies and planets. You got 3 set races, Terran, Zerg, and Protoss, and the factions between them. You run around Char as a Tal'Darim Protoss, or United Earth Directorate Terran, nuke cities as a Ghost class, or burn Lings as a Firebat, upgrade pieces of armor for Terran, evolve as a Zerg, advanced tech for Protoss. It's a dream that we have all thought about at one point or another. What if the next big Blizzard MMO centers around the universe of Starcraft? Well, first up, let's look at the realistic possibility of its creation, Blizzard's current projects, the future ones, rumors, and leaks. Back in 2007, CVG claimed the Starcraft MMO was about to be announced, which of course turned out to be false, but was followed by a Starcraft II announcement the next year. Rumors about Project Titan, the revolutionary next generation MMO, pointed to World of Starcraft, until Blizzard confirmed in 2009 that it will be based on an entirely new franchise, and is planned to coexist with WoW. In 2011, Frank Pierce, Blizzard's co-founder, he explained the company was too busy with other projects to create a World of Starcraft. However, if they had a team of at least 50 in the company that were free and passionate about a Starcraft MMO, then they would do it. But as of that point back in 2011, they had no plans outside the 3 Starcraft RTS games moving forward. Similar to Warcraft 4, it all depends on how the majority of devs feel about it and whether or not they have free time. But you also have to look at how high expectations would be for World of Starcraft. You can't half-ass it by assigning the B team to develop it when WoW is still going and Blizzard's big players are busy with Titan. In fact, you might actually say WoW is already getting developed by the B team since the original devs trained new guys to take over so they could move on to bigger projects. So, would you roll with a C team developed Starcraft MMO? I can just imagine it now. The hype is massive, everyone labels it the new WoW killer, of course. It gets released, then it sinks harder and faster than the Titanic. I don't want this. Nobody wants this. Maybe WoW will one day reach a point where the player base dwindles down to almost nothing. Maybe the B team could begin work on a Starcraft successor while the big players focus on Titan and beyond. That's the only possible circumstance that I could foresee the development of World of Starcraft. Otherwise, they'd just be pissing around. The RTS programmers obviously can't help unless they get trained to. Art and design would feasibly port over from Starcraft II, but for the most part, it sounds like more trouble than it's worth, especially considering how flooded the MMORPG market is right now. There has been a World of Starcraft custom map in Starcraft II. You might have heard about it in the last couple of years, Starcraft Universe by Upheaval Arts. It appeared on Kickstarter and successfully raised $80,000 with Blizzard's blessing. Here's a clip from their official trailer. It's also linked in the description box below.
Battle stations, all personnel weapons hot. We are condition red, 1, Alpha. Incoming hybrid
Protoss brethren, heed me. The last twilight has fallen. The galaxy burns around us. But if we are to meet our end this day, then we will do so as one. Emperor Cassinar!
I am Tar Zarash, successor to the fallen Dark Prelate, Zeratul. Like you, I am one of the few survivors of this shattered world, appointed by my predecessor to gather the lost and the broken. But the hybrids have forced us into hiding, and we stand no chance of defeating their endless armies. A single timeless archive holds the secret to our survival. If there is resilience left within you, then be focused of heart, and you shall find me. If there are others with you, share with them my words, and when you arrive, be prepared to sacrifice all that we have ever known for one final chance at victory, for that will be the price we pay. Varen Zeratul.
If you have not given it a whirl already, I highly recommend you try it. The footage you see playing now is from my attempt at the starting zone, although since Australian latency is garbage and I may have been downloading one or two things in the background, my experience was quite jittery. Nevertheless, the map is polished beyond belief. You have 8 class choices, hot bars, maps, smooth combat, vendors, and everything you come to expect in an MMO, including cutscenes and voice acting so top notch it is on the level of a Starcraft II campaign. In saying this though, Starcraft Universe is not a true MMO by any stretch, and Upheaval even states this quite clearly on the detail screen before you even start playing. But it's interesting regardless, more so that it's officially recognized by Blizzard, with them even offering the guys at Upheaval a trip to Blizzard HQ to tour their offices. What a nice company. And now we turn to some viewer comments, starting with Matthew Lawton. The trouble with a Starcraft MMO is how do you make one that just isn't a WoW graphic patch? I am convinced the continued development of Starcraft as an RTS is the reason we have yet to see Warcraft 4. The IPs are too similar in terms of gameplay, and WoW has almost too thoroughly defined what an MMO is. It's very telling that many RTSs tend to ape Starcraft, and more than half the MMOs out there are bad WoW clones. Blizz knows it needs this separation in IPs, I just don't see room for it. And Matthew is quite right. Would World of Starcraft be forever overshadowed by WoW? The WoW clone epidemic started because companies were hoping to cash in on the craze, just like Digimon during the Pokemon Red and Blue explosion. But the thing about MMORPGs is that they require a significant time and money sink. You have to be invested in the world, the gameplay, the characters, the story. Otherwise the game flops, and it flops hard. I have no doubt Project Titan will evolve the genre in numerous ways, but when you have 3 big franchises like Diablo, Starcraft and Warcraft, you can't have them all competing with each other for profit. Otherwise your company implodes and your player base gets sick of the same stale, repetitive genre you're subjecting them to. Starcraft uses the same art style as WoW, overblown big muscles, big armor dudes, half-naked supermodel death machines, stylistic over-cartoony environments. That's just the Blizzard way, it's their signature. Sure, WoW and World of Starcraft might feel different because of the genre switch from fantasy to science fiction, but aesthetically it'll function the same. Story and script-wise it'll be the equivalent of Warcraft in space. If WoW had originally been built to only receive 1 or 2 expansions, I could totally see them working on a Starcraft successor, just like Warcraft 3 did for the original Starcraft using the same dev team. But we're not talking about an RTS here. You can't just switch franchises when your game has a subscription model. You can't replicate WoW success in our MMORPG bloated post-WoW era. I'm sure the team would love to be able to work on World of Starcraft, but when WoW is generating that much income, you'd be an absolute fool not to support it. On the topic of other RTSs aping Starcraft, there's a pretty massive grain of truth to that. 1 year ago, a Reddit user by the name of Neo Destiny posted about how Starcraft will be dead by the next expansion, The Legacy of the Void, if the game doesn't make a few big changes. The article is linked below. To sum up, Heart of the Swarm wasn't nearly the boost to the game and esports in general needed for viewers following Wings of Liberty, which is far unlike Brood War, and that led to sponsors dropping teams because they weren't receiving the necessary return on their investments. Casuals aren't playing Starcraft 2 following the campaign, like, at all. Mainly due to the heavy focus on laddering, rushed matches ending within minutes, and subsequent ladder anxiety, which we can all attest to. Unlike Brood War or Warcraft 3, custom games are sorted by popularity, not shoved in a random list, which means the new or unknown maps barely get anywhere, and the pros' elitist attitudes make popular games unbearable to play. I personally remember making custom maps in Warcraft 3, hosting them, and getting a full room in minutes, but nowadays, fat chance. So Starcraft does need a change, yes, but a transition to World of Starcraft? No thanks. And our next comment from LaughUp02. As a person who plays Starcraft 2 a lot more than WoW, I think they should go with something like Starcraft Ghost. A Starcraft MMO would be sort of meh, and the only time it might be able to fit IMO is an eventual battle against Amon. And due to that, unless there is a lot else planned, there would be at most, if any, 1 to 2 expansions. Starcraft Ghost would be a lot better in my opinion, and there is already a team of people who are making a Starcraft MMO in the Starcraft II arcade. So if the Old Republic had just been called Knights of the Old Republic 3 and released as a single player game, it would have made BioWare and EA more money. Sure, the Old Republic sold a ton, but when you factor in server uptime costs, the employee wages to create new content, and the continued advertisement budget, they actually lose out. Blizzard have said time and time again, Starcraft Ghost was never cancelled. They just didn't want to release a project they weren't 100% satisfied with. Maybe one day they'll decide to can their RTS lineup. I mean, they've already got Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone on the way. Assign the RTS guys to a console-only Starcraft adaptation. The action RPG FPS Borderlands worked out well for Gearbox. Maybe they could adapt and evolve the same principles for Starcraft Ghost. Take the series in a brand new direction but retain the old feel of big space battles, strategy and micromanagement for a new crowd in a new format. Level up roles and classes like the medic or firebat instead of your character itself. Encompass unique playstyles like FPS controls for a marine, RTS elements for siege tank. And if the team's big enough, do both, a Starcraft III and Ghost tie-in game. What a lot of companies don't understand is that MMORPGs only work in a very specific circumstance. If you're the first at the table with a new big game like WoW, you're gonna succeed and benefit greatly. If WoW falls off its pedestal, another MMO would take its place and succeed. If a big IP comes along, the game boasts significant improvements over WoW and proves it too, it's gonna succeed. Everything else in this genre fails, or at least barely makes an income. If you're making DLC, microtransactions or subscription content, you better have a damn big player base ready to purchase it, or you're just better off making a single player game with multiplayer components so you can work on another big game without worrying about rising costs of service. In the industry's current climate, Starcraft would serve much better as a one-off immersive world console game with WoW elements rather than as a competitor or successor in that genre. Next comment from Alex Ty Jessen. Creating a Starcraft MMO would be a bad idea. There just aren't enough lore threads in the game that it could be a fully fleshed MMO. It's basically just like Warcraft. Warcraft 1 didn't have enough stuff to be a full MMO. Warcraft 2 didn't either. Warcraft 3, however, had loose ends and cliffhangers and a whole universe of already prepared content that the players would love to explore. Give Starcraft another title and it may be that they could add more cliffhangers and stuff, but in its current state I would say no, they won't. On the topic of story in the latest Starcraft games, Chris Metzen spoke to the guys over at PC Gamer and had this to say.
Having come through, Warcraft 3, we tried a much more cinematic take on things. You had these really nice glue screens and cinematic sequences that wove the whole story together. So we tried a much bigger story on Warcraft 3. And while I love Warcraft 3, there's times where it was a little too top heavy. When your story's so woven in and out of all the gameplay, and the gameplay has to change all the way up until you ship the game to make, to optimize levels and make it fun, it can be really, really top heavy to tell that much story. So when we decided to build Starcraft II, there was kind of the suggestion of like, well, what if we tried to pull the story a little bit more out of the maps and just let the level design be what it is, and just facilitate really fun maps, and really had the story rest in a different kind of space. And so kind of like that old school Wing Commander idea that we would build kind of sets and be able to move from this set to that and small talk with people, develop relationships, click on little photographs on a post-it board, and be able to kind of just explore a little bit more of the ship and the universe ultimately. And so I loved that experiment with Wings of Liberty. I loved that it kind of had more texture, more deeper characters, deeper points of interaction. I think over time, we're getting better at this stuff. We're still learning. We learn every time out. Kind of the do's and don'ts, what facilitates gameplay or what feels cumbersome to gameplay. There's still, a lot of people have allergic reactions. If you're going to go play a certain type of game that's hugely cinematic, well, that's why you buy it off the shelf in the first place. But our games, people tend to want to get back into the action very, very quickly. And so a lot of cinematic content or a lot of story context can become very cumbersome very quickly. So that's something, but I've got these big stories to tell. I got this beat, and it's going to be wonderful, and you're all going to get it. Like, oh man, it's. So we tend to be very iterative on that kind of stuff and how the story's coming off. So we constantly learn more and more about that process. And for Heart of the Swarm specifically, we pulled back a little bit, all the little points of interactivity, just to streamline the flow of story as much as possible, so that you had fewer buttons to click to jump straight back into your next mission. That was really something we wanted to really reinforce this time around.
The games are focused on gameplay now, not the story. It really doesn't excuse the cheesiness and predictability of Wings of Liberty and HOTS though, but it does prove the game isn't getting set up for some massive project like Frozen Throne did for WoW. I mean, pretty much all the storylines ended there on a cliffhanger, like Sylvanas and the Forsaken, Arthas on the Frozen Throne and so on. Whereas Starcraft II seems to be wrapping everything up in a neat little package. There's a prophecy, Kerrigan is the key, hybrids are evil and must be stopped, simplistic stuff all heading towards Legacy of the Void. As for story in this supposed world of Starcraft, it really depends. Assuming they were making it for a moment, it's more than within the realm of possibility that they'd have learned from WoW and build it from the ground up to advance story as it goes. Vanilla through Wrath saw a considerable more consumption of lore than creation. It's only in the last couple of expansions that things have been moving forward, like Cataclysm leveling zones and Garrosh's reign as war chief. If they decide to push World of Starcraft out, they have the blueprints for dozens of potential worlds, heaps of class choices, 3 defined races, and an established in-game history. So to sum up, Starcraft II isn't setting us up for new stories, but World of Starcraft would likely hold its own if it was ever created. And now one final comment from Superfry. Vanilla Starcraft MMO. Main villain, some pubic hairs left over from Arcturus spread within the cosmic winds and infect all the known universe. Players from all 3 factions must defeat this gaseous threat or be forever imprisoned in the Amazon jungle, aka Arcturus's rampant pubes. Playable races, Abathur's love child, pink pint-sized ultralisk, Protoss Lost Viking. That's it for this discussion. As for the topic for next week, I want to talk about trash in raids. With the Siege of Orgrimmar, have we gone too far, where your raid team can one-shot bosses but wipe on trash? Do you feel the backlash from Trial of the Crusader and Wrath caused the overabundance of trash mobs? What is the perfect amount of trash between bosses and how difficult should they be? I am very much looking forward to talking about this topic. I feel very strongly about it. That's it. Have a good one.